The blind florist knew the arrangement had been replaced before the hotel's security team knew there was anything to investigate. What she found beneath the flowers was serious enough to stop a multi-million-dollar merger dinner for 6 minutes. But the more disturbing discovery came later, when two different men spoke in the same room and both sounded like someone she had been hearing for nearly a year. One of them was lying about who he was. By 7:30 that evening, Amara Bennett had already been asked 3 times. Each time, someone offered to guide her across the ballroom. The first time, she answered politely. The second time, she said she knew the floor plan better than the man asking. The third time, she ignored the question and continued adjusting a bank of white camellias near the eastern partition of the Asterion Hotel's 32nd floor event hall. She had spent 2 days inside that room. She knew the distance between the service doors and the negotiation suite by footfall. She knew where the ventilation shifted near the glass wall. She knew which marble sections carried a sharper echo beneath hard-soled shoes. None of that impressed Shun Kagawa. Kagawa was the hotel's hospitality director for the merger gala, and his job was to make sure nothing unpredictable happened in front of the investors arriving from Singapore, London, Osaka, and New York. Amara, in his judgment, was unpredictable. She was 33, blind, foreign independent, and unwilling to let staff move her equipment without permission. That was enough. Bennett. She heard him approaching before he spoke. Fast pace, narrow shoes, phone vibration against fabric. Yes, we've had a security adjustment. His tone had changed since afternoon. Less ceremonial, more urgent. Your access badge is being restricted. Amara stopped with one hand around a camellia stem. For what reason? Operational control. That is not a reason. It is tonight. She turned toward his voice. Kagawa continued before she could answer. You'll remain on the service side until the principal guests are seated. If anything needs changing, one of my staff will bring you the arrangement. That won't work. It will. Amara touched the edge of the ceramic container in front of her. Your staff don't know how these are balanced. They can carry flowers. They can also damage them. His exhale was short. He was afraid of something. Not of her, of the event. That made him more rigid. Ms. Bennett, this room contains people whose security requirements changed within the last hour. I'm not debating this. There it was. Not cruelty, calculation. He had an event full of expensive people and one contractor he believed he could control without consequence. Amara removed the badge from the lanyard around her neck. She held it toward him. Then, take it. He hesitated. Perhaps he had expected an argument. He accepted the badge. Stay near the East Service corridor. You've just made me useless. I'm trying to make the room manageable. Amara gave him nothing in return. Kagawa walked away. 3 minutes later, she found the thing that nearly ruined his career. It began with smell. The Eastern Camellia installation had been assembled that afternoon from flowers stored separately because of temperature sensitivity. Amara had conditioned the stems herself. The arrangement should have carried the damp green scent of freshly cut leaves and faint ceramic dust from the handmade container. It should have had the soft bitterness of camellia foliage. Instead, she smelled recently cut stems. Not the same thing. She reached forward. The top layer felt correct. White camellias, broad leaves, the same low, asymmetrical profile she had designed. Her fingers moved deeper. The internal wiring was wrong. Amara went still. She used 24-gauge green floral wire for that section. The replacement used something stiffer. She followed one stem down toward the base. The cut was fresh, not from 4 hours ago, much more recent. She called to the nearest hotel employee. Don't touch this. A young banquet supervisor stopped. Sorry, this arrangement has been replaced. The man looked at it. It looks identical. It isn't. He came closer. Maybe one of your assistants? No. She took out her phone. Kagawa. The supervisor did not move. Call him. Kagawa returned irritated. That irritation lasted less than 30 seconds. Amara explained the differences. Fresh cuts, wrong wire, different internal balance. Kagawa looked at the flowers, then at her. Could this have been maintenance? No. How certain are you? Enough that nobody should move it until security opens the base. His face went unreadable, but the silence from the people around him told her everything. Then he made a decision. Clear this section. 2 members of hotel security arrived. One asked Amara to step back. She did. They removed the flowers first, then the internal foam, then the false liner beneath the ceramic rim. A small object struck the metal inspection tray. No one spoke. One of the security officers lifted it with gloved fingers. Directional transmitter. Kagawa said nothing. The banquet supervisor did. How did that get there? Amara answered before security could. Someone rebuilt my arrangement. Kagawa turned toward her. This time his voice sounded different than before. Who had access? My 2 assistants. Hotel floral staff during delivery. Anyone who entered the holding area after 5. Can you identify whether your assistants touched this? Yes. How they don't use this wire either. The head of security looked toward Kagawa. We need the loading corridor footage. Kagawa nodded, then he looked back at Amara. You're staying here. It would have been almost funny if the object on the tray had not been real. An hour earlier, he had restricted her because he thought she made security harder. Now he needed her because she had noticed what security had missed. Amara did not enjoy the reversal. She understood the consequence too quickly for that. Someone had copied her work closely enough to fool anyone who glanced at it. Which meant someone had studied it. The head of security asked where the arrangement had been placed originally. Amara pointed. Near the eastern partition, behind that private negotiation suite. Kagawa glanced at him. That reaction gave Amara more information than any answer could. The device had not been hidden near a decorative wall. It had been positioned near something important. A man's voice came from several feet behind her. How did you know it wasn't yours? Amara turned slightly. She had not heard him approach. That was unusual. Not impossible, just unusual. His English was precise and lightly accented. She estimated late 30s. Japanese. Low vocal register. No impatience in the question. I touched it. That was enough. The flowers were cut, later than mine. The wire was wrong. A pause. And you remember the wire? I remember my work. She expected another question. Instead, the man said, apparently better than they remember their security. Kagawa interrupted. Sir, we're handling this. The man did not answer him. That told Amara something. Kagawa was a man who expected contractors to obey him. He had just spoken carefully to a stranger. Amara filed that away. Then the stranger asked, Do you remember voices the same way? The question landed differently. Yes. All voices. No. Which ones? The ones I hear more than once? He said nothing for a moment. Amara became aware of a faint trace of cedar clean wool and something metallic from the direction of his coat. Not cologne. Probably the environment. Then he stepped away. Kagawa followed him with words this time, instead of instructions. I'll update you when we have the footage. Amara heard no response. She decided not to. The gala continued. That fact surprised her more than it should have. No evacuation, no public panic. The transmitter was removed, the eastern corridor was restricted, and guests began arriving as though nothing had happened. That was how wealthy institutions survived embarrassment. They contained it. Amara was given temporary access again, though now accompanied by security. Kagawa did not apologize. She had not expected him to. Instead, he asked her to verify every major arrangement herself. That was apology enough for the moment. By 8:15, the room had filled. Amara worked near the edge of the ballroom, making small corrections, while conversations gathered around her in layers. Japanese, English, French, the clink of glass, fabric brushing chairs, low laughter. Then she heard a male voice near the center of the room. She stopped. The speaker was polished, confident, Japanese speaking English to someone from overseas. She knew the cadence, or thought she did. For 11 months, an anonymous customer had called Nocturne Floral Atelier every few weeks. He gave no surname, only an initial, R. He ordered white camellias more than once, black calla lilies twice, winter jasmine when it was difficult to source. He always insisted that Amara take the call personally. At first she assumed he was particular, then she assumed he was lonely. Either way, he paid on time and asked strange questions about substitutions. The man speaking now sounded almost exactly like him. Amara moved closer to the edge of the room. Someone nearby murmured a name. Kiryu-san. Masato Kiryu. She had seen the name on the gala materials. She had later lost enough sight to stop relying on print. Senior executive. Merger liaison. Nothing in the paperwork suggested he should make people lower their voices around him. Yet they did. Amara listened. Kiryu laughed softly at something. Wrong. Not completely wrong, just wrong enough. R always took a shallow breath after longer phrases. Kiryu did not. R paused before certain consonants when switching from Japanese to English. Kiryu moved through them cleanly. Amara frowned, then a second voice spoke behind her. Leave the arrangement where it is. She froze. The same man from earlier. The quiet stranger. But this time, there were no security questions. No distraction. No people speaking over him. She heard the full sentence in her head. The pause before arrangement. The breath after leave. The slight compression on the final consonant. Amara turned toward him. You. He did not move away. You've called my shop. Across the room, Masato Kiryu was still speaking, in the voice she had believed she remembered. And standing less than 2 feet from her was another man, whose voice felt even more familiar. For the first time that evening, Amara was no longer sure the transmitter was the most dangerous thing someone had planted inside the hotel. You've called my shop. Amara heard the sentence leave her mouth and immediately understood how strange it sounded. The man standing behind her did not deny it at once. That mattered. Across the ballroom, Masato Kiryu continued speaking to a cluster of investors as though nothing had happened. His voice still carried enough resemblance to the anonymous customer called R that Amara could understand why she had reacted to it. But the man in front of her was closer, not in volume, in pattern. I don't believe I have, he said. Amara turned fully toward him. You believe I know. The correction was clean. No nervous laugh, no attempt to soften it. That irritated her more than a clumsy lie would have. You asked whether I remember voices. I did. And now you're telling me I've never heard yours. Yes. Then why did you ask? Before he answered, Kagawa approached from the side. Ms. Bennett, Mr. Tuck. The man interrupted him. Not here. Kagawa stopped. Amara noticed that too. He had barked orders at hotel staff all evening. With this man, he stopped himself in the middle of a name. A security officer arrived moments later and requested that Amara accompany them to a private service lounge. She did not move. Why? We need to discuss the transmitter. Then discuss it. The stranger said. Because someone in this building knows where your arrangements were placed. Amara turned toward his voice again. That is not an answer. No, it is the reason. She disliked that he was good at distinguishing the two. Still, she followed. The room they entered was designed for staff breaks. It had been cleared in a hurry. A vending machine hummed against one wall. Someone had removed the chairs around the central table, except for 3. Kagawa remained near the door. The stranger did not sit. Neither did Amara. A hotel security manager placed the recovered transmitter inside a clear evidence pouch. It wasn't broadcasting continuously, he said. Short, directional captures. Very clean. Toward what Amara asked. He hesitated. The stranger answered instead. A voice authentication terminal. That changed the shape of the problem. Amara knew enough about corporate events to understand financial verification systems, but she had never seen one installed beside floral staging. What was being authenticated? Private authorization. For the merger, among other things. Kagawa glanced toward him, clearly unhappy with how much was being said. Amara heard it in the movement of his clothes before he spoke. Sir, perhaps we should limit no one word. Not loud. Final. Kagawa stayed quiet. Amara faced the stranger. Who are you? He did not answer. The security manager looked away. That told her more than a title would have. She returned to the practical question. If someone wanted speech samples, why hide a transmitter in flowers? Because the flowers were already approved, the man said. Security would inspect new equipment. Decorative inventory would receive less attention, unless someone knew the florist would notice. He paused. They assumed you wouldn't. It offered no comfort to be underestimated and then proven right. Amara folded her arms. What does Kiryu have to do with this? This time, the room changed through behavior rather than silence. Kagawa moved closer to the door. The security manager stopped touching the evidence pouch. The stranger answered. Masato Kiryu has been allowed to appear more important than his formal position suggests. Allowed by whom? Several people. That sounds deliberate. It was. Amara listened to the words carefully. Why? Because sometimes an organization benefits when outsiders misunderstand who actually holds authority. There it was. Not the full truth. Enough of it to matter. What organization? He gave her the name. Kurohane. She had heard it before, not through gossip, through clients, logistics companies, security firms, 2 restaurant groups, a property company that had once tried to lease the floor beneath her shop. Different businesses, same quiet repetition around the edges. Kurohane Alliance, she asked. The security manager looked at her. The stranger did not. Yes. Amara let that settle. She understood what he had just admitted. Not merely corporate influence, underworld structure, hidden behind legitimate businesses. And Kiryu works for them. He works near them. That is not the same thing. No. For the first time, Amara almost smiled. He knew she was listening for imprecision. He was beginning to choose his words around her. That was a kind of respect. Not trust? Not yet. The security manager brought up a recording from the device analysis. A short burst of male speech played through the room speaker. Kiryu, then another. Different angle, cleaner. The system had been gathering individual phrases. Amara stepped closer to the table. Play the second one again. He did. Kiryu spoke 9 words in English. Amara listened. Again. The third time she heard what had bothered her in the ballroom. The voice was familiar. The breathing wasn't. R had a slight interruption after longer phrases. Not a wheeze, not illness, just a shallow reset. Kiryu did not. She said, He sounds like someone I know. The stranger replied, The caller, yes. What did he order? Amara gave him a short list. Camellias, calla lilies, winter jasmine, several custom requests, how often? Every few weeks. For how long? 11 months. Kagawa looked up sharply. The stranger remained still. Did he always speak to you? Yes, always, he insisted on it. That finally produced a visible consequence around her. The security manager reached for his phone. The stranger stopped him with a small gesture. Not yet. Amara heard the fabric movement. Why not? Because once we start pulling records, someone may know we've connected them. That was the first choice that actually cost him. Waiting meant less control, less information, more risk, but it also prevented whoever planted the device from learning what they knew. Amara noticed that. He asked, Do you record customer calls for training and order verification? Some of them. Do you have his... Probably. I need access. No. Kagawa turned toward her. The stranger did not react. Amara continued, My business records don't become yours because you asked. You may be in danger. That doesn't change ownership. He considered that for a moment. Then he said, What would A reason? I gave you one. You gave me half of one. This time he accepted the criticism. Fair. That single word did more between them than any threat could. He did not pressure her, he did not invoke the organization he had just named, he did not order the phone taken. Instead, he stepped back from the table. When you decide whether the reason is sufficient, you can show me what you choose. Amara had expected power. What she got was restraint. She trusted restraint more. Not enough. More. The investigation continued through the next hour. The transmitter's placement was mapped against the private negotiation suite. The voice authentication terminal sat beyond the eastern partition. It was close enough that the device could capture clean phrases whenever the inner door opened. That explained why the floral arrangement mattered. It did not explain why Amara's shop had become involved. Near 10 o'clock, she returned briefly to the ballroom. She went to verify another installation before leaving. Kiryu was still there. So was the stranger. This time, Amara listened to both of them without trying to decide which one sounded like R. She focused on details instead. Kiryu's speech was polished almost too evenly. The stranger used shorter phrases. Kiryu projected outward. The stranger made people come closer. Neither fact meant anything yet. Then, a woman approached Kiryu and greeted him in a low voice. She used no formal corporate title, just one name, Takamori. Amara stopped walking. The stranger was several meters behind her. She turned toward him. He knew what she had heard. That was Kiryu, she said. Yes. She called him Takamori. Yes. And you let her? Yes. The answer arrived too quickly. Amara's irritation returned. Why? Because for years it has been useful when people believed the wrong man was me. There was no point pretending anymore. He gave her the rest. My name is Renji Takamori. Amara said nothing. The name explained Kagawa's caution, the security deference, the deliberate ambiguity, the hidden organization. It also made the entire evening more dangerous. You run Kurohane. Yes. And Kiryu is being mistaken for you on purpose. Historically, sometimes. Historically, tonight may be different. That answer created the next question immediately. Different, how Renji continued. My anonymity protects certain holdings. It also protects people around me. But if someone can persuade banks, partners, and intermediaries that Kiryu is the man behind my name, they can begin giving his instructions the same weight as mine. Amara understood. You built a system where nobody could prove who you were. Yes. And now someone is using that against you. Yes. For the first time, his hidden identity did not make him seem more powerful. It made him exposed. That surprised her. Later, when Amara prepared to leave, Renji told her 2 men would remain outside her building overnight. No, they will stay outside. No, they won't enter. That isn't the point. Then, tell me the point. You don't get to turn my home into one of your controlled sites because your organization has a problem. He could have ignored her. Instead, he asked, what would you accept? 1 car across the street. No one follows me inside. No one speaks to my neighbors. Tomorrow we reassess. Renji nodded. Done. She waited. No argument, you gave terms, and I agreed. It should not have mattered. It did. By the time Amara reached her apartment, she had decided to review the archived client calls herself. Not for Renji, for her. She found 6 recordings attached to old orders from R. She played the first, White Camellias, a polite voice, a familiar cadence. Then the second, Black Calla Lilies. The same man asked whether she remembered what he had ordered the month before. The third contained a strange pause. It came after Amara asked an unexpected question about delivery timing. 3 seconds, then the answer. She replayed it. Again. 3 seconds. The next morning, she brought the recordings to a neutral office arranged by hotel security, not Kurohane. Renji arrived alone. That was another choice she noticed. Amara placed her phone on the table. You can listen. You don't take the files. Agreed. They played the first recording. Renji listened without moving. The second, the third. At the fourth, he stopped playback himself. Who told you this was me? No one. You assumed I recognized the voice." Renji looked toward the phone. Amara could hear the change in his breathing now. She was paying attention, not fear, calculation. Then he said one thing. It made the previous 11 months impossible to understand in the same way. "I never called your shop." The anonymous customer had not merely sounded like Renji Takamori. Someone had wanted Amara to believe he did. By the end of the week, Amara had lost 4 contracts. None of the cancellations mentioned Renji Takamori. That would have been easier. Instead, the messages were polite. A hotel group cited changing brand priorities. A luxury retailer referenced reputational alignment. One client simply said the board had decided to postpone all external floral commissions. Amara read none of the emails herself. Her screen reader did. The language changed. The meaning did not. Someone had photographed Renji leaving Nocturne Floral Atelier 2 nights earlier. The image was grainy, taken from across the street, but his face was clear enough for people who knew what to look for. Amara's name was not mentioned publicly. It did not need to be. Nocturne's storefront was visible behind him. By Thursday morning, gossip had done the rest. Renji stood near the front counter while Amara deleted another cancellation. "You can stop this," she said. "Yes." He answered at once. She turned toward him. "That was not permission. I know." He had arrived alone again. No visible security. No driver waiting directly outside, only the single car across the street she had agreed to. He had kept that condition. That mattered. It did not make the situation easier. How, she asked. 2 calls. To whom? The people who made the cancellations. And what would you say? Withdrawing from your business because I entered your shop would be a poor commercial decision. Amara gave a short laugh. That is not what they would hear. Renji did not answer. They would hear that Takamori is watching them. Yes, and then they would come back. Probably, because they value my work, no. That answer cost him something. Not strategically. Between them, he did not. Amara placed her phone on the counter. Then, no. You may lose more, I know. I can prevent that. You'd be replacing one fear with another. It would protect the business. No, it would preserve revenue. He looked toward the rows of flowers behind her. What is the difference? If they come back because you frighten them, every future order will belong partly to you. Renji considered that. Amara continued. I built this place before I knew your name. I'm aware. I need that to remain true after this is over. He nodded once. Then I won't call. That was the first time she trusted him with something important. Not her safety, her independence. It was also when whoever was watching them found a new way to hurt them both. Renji left the shop 40 minutes later. By noon, another contract disappeared. The cost was immediate. The consequence for Renji came through numbers. At 3:15, his operations council called. A transfer involving 2 Kurohane-linked freight terminals had moved toward a holding company associated with Kanzaki Meridian. Renji stopped it. That required him to authenticate authority through a chain of intermediaries. Those intermediaries were usually designed to conceal that authority. The transfer froze. So did 3 other accounts. By evening, 2 banks had requested formal beneficial ownership confirmation. Renji sat in the back office of Nocturne with the documents open on a tablet. Amara poured tea into 2 cups. You stopped the transfer. Yes, and now they want proof that I had the right to stop it. That sounds reasonable. It would be if the structure had been designed for transparency. She set a cup beside him. You built it. Yes. Then this is not happening to you. He looked up. It is partly happening because of you. For a moment she thought he was blaming her. Then he added, and partly because of me. That distinction mattered. Amara sat across from him. Why build it this way? Renji did not answer immediately. She expected another half-truth. Instead, he unlocked the tablet and turned it face down. When I took control of Kurohane, every visible leader became a target for something different. Police sometimes. Rivals. Yes. Internal pressure, more often than rivals. He spoke without drama. Visible authority attracted leverage. Board members learned which relatives to approach. Competitors learned where leaders lived. Banks learned which signatures mattered. Political intermediaries learned whose name could be threatened. Renji responded by separating identity from control, holding companies, proxy directors, attorneys, authorized representatives, no single public face, no single point that could be attacked. For 12 years, he said it worked, until people stopped knowing which face was yours. Yes. Amara leaned back, and Kiryu benefited from that. He was useful because people were willing to make assumptions. Useful to you for a time. That answer did not excuse anything, but it explained the structure. Renji had created ambiguity deliberately. Now, someone else was deciding what the ambiguity meant. Amara understood something else too. His instinct to manage her movements, her building her protection, it came from the same system. Remove uncertainty, control access, reduce visible risk. A strategy that worked on companies did not work on people. Protection becomes ownership quickly with you, she said. Renji did not defend himself. That is why you keep refusing it. Yes. And why I keep asking instead of deciding. Recently? Recently. That was as close to an admission as either of them needed. The investigation moved forward that evening. Amara reopened the archived calls from R. They had listened before for identity. This time she listened for intent. The first call was ordinary. White camellias. The second included a question about whether she remembered his previous order. The third did the same. By the fifth, the pattern was difficult to ignore. Do you remember what I asked for last time? Would you recognize my order if I called without giving a name? Was my voice different today? At the time, the questions had seemed eccentric. Rich clients often wanted to be remembered. Now they sounded structured. Renji listened beside her. Play the fifth again. She did. R asked about replacing winter jasmine with osmanthus. Amara answered that the fragrance profile would change. Then she asked whether the delivery should still go to the same address. 3 seconds passed. Exactly. Then R answered. Renji said again. She replayed it. 3 seconds. What Amara asked? Spontaneous question. Yes. Listen to the earlier calls. They did. Whenever R delivered a standard request, the response was smooth. Whenever Amara asked something unexpected, there was sometimes a delay. Not every time. Enough. It could be routing, she said. It could. Or someone listening before answering. Yes. Or something generating the answer. Renji said nothing. He did not need to. The possibility was already in the room. Amara pulled up the original gala contract. It had come through an executive events office at Kanzaki Meridian. She searched the sender details. The contract approval carried the authorization of Vice Chairwoman, Etsuko Hasegawa. Amara remembered the name. She had heard Hasegawa introduced at the gala, senior enough to influence contracting, senior enough to affect access, senior enough that Kagawa might obey a last-minute security instruction without questioning where it originated. Renji asked, "Why your shop?" "That is what I want to know." There were larger firms bidding. Yes. More established. Yes. Then, someone chose you, for a reason. Amara disliked how quickly that conclusion settled into place. She'd stood and walked toward the front room. Renji followed. "You should leave Tokyo for a few days." "No, I am asking, and I am answering." "The situation is changing." "My situation changed when clients started canceling because someone photographed you here." That is precisely why she stopped near the work table. "You do not get to create the association, then remove me from my own life, because the association became inconvenient." Renji answered carefully. "This is not about convenience. It is about control. It is about reducing exposure to what we don't know yet. Then you are asking me to disappear because of a threat you cannot define." Yes, at least that is honest. He let the criticism stand. Amara touched the edge of the work table. My business is already part of this. My phone records are part of it. My name is in their contracting system. Leaving does not remove me. It may remove immediate risk, and it may leave everyone else free to decide what happened to me. Renji understood then that pushing harder would cost more than it protected. He stepped back. What do you want? To finish finding out why they chose me. That answer changed their relationship again. She was no longer cooperating because Renji had information she needed. She was choosing the investigation as her own. He accepted it. Then, we do it your way. Not entirely. No. Good. The attraction between them had been there before either acknowledged it. Now something more dangerous had joined it. Reliance. Not dependence. Reliance. Amara trusted Renji to keep an agreement. Renji trusted Amara to notice what his people missed. That made both of them more effective. It also gave their enemies a clearer map. The next morning, Renji received confirmation that 2 regional managers had accepted authorization instructions from Kiryu, not because they believed Kiryu literally was Renji, because documents supporting his authority had become easier to verify than Renji's hidden chain of control. By afternoon, a second bank placed a review hold on Kurohan-linked commercial assets. Then the real escalation arrived. Kanzaki Meridian released internal correspondence showing that Renji Takamori had supposedly approved several controversial transfers months earlier. Kiryu privately confirmed to investors that he had acted under that identity. The lie had outgrown posing as a man. It was becoming a usable institution. Renji read the documents twice. Amara listened as his counsel summarized them. Then she understood why the system was more dangerous than a forged signature. If enough bank's executives and managers accepted Kiryu's version of Takamori, then truth itself would stop being sufficient. Renji locked the tablet. If they can decide which one of us is real, he said, then my name no longer belongs to me. Amara looked toward the phone containing 11 months of calls from a man who had never existed. And for the first time, she understood that the thing she had chosen to protect her own credibility was now one of the weapons inside the conflict. By Monday morning, 3 banks had frozen transactions connected to Kurohani-linked companies. Not because they had concluded Renji was lying, because they could no longer prove which version of Renji Takamori had authority. That distinction was enough to stop millions of dollars from moving. Amara heard the crisis through speakerphone in the back room of Nocturne, while Renji's counsel explained what had changed overnight. Kiryu had appeared in 2 private verification calls with investors. Hasegawa had circulated internal Kanzaki Meridian records showing that Takamori had approved earlier transfers. Several managers who had worked through intermediaries for years now faced 2 competing chains of instruction. One came from a man most of them had never met. The other came from a man whose identity had been reinforced by documents, meetings, and repeated institutional acceptance. Truth was losing to usability. Renji ended the call. Amara stood beside the work table with her phone in one hand. If you order them to obey you now, what happens? They may obey. That wasn't my question. They create records showing that Kurohane coerced commercial partners during a merger dispute, so Hasegawa wins either way. If I use the usual methods, yes. That was the first time Amara had heard him admit that his power had become structurally useless. Not insufficient, counterproductive. She placed her phone on the table. Then, stop trying to prove you're the real man. Renji looked toward her. Prove how they built the fake one. The old calls from R were already organized by date. Amara had listened to them so many times that she knew where the strange pauses appeared before playback began. This time she stopped listening for resemblance. She listened for construction. The pattern sharpened once she stopped assuming R had been a normal caller. Predictable questions received immediate answers. Unexpected questions often produced delay. Questions about delivery windows, substitutions, Address changes, anything that required a response outside the structure of an order. 3 seconds sometimes, 2.5 on others. Never long enough to feel unnatural in ordinary conversation, long enough to matter when isolated. Renji's counsel joined remotely with an independent audio forensics specialist arranged through the hotel's legal team. Amara refused to let Kurohani staff touch the original files. Renji did not argue. That mattered more now than it had when he first agreed not to take her phone. The specialist marked the delays. Processing artifacts were found within several responses. Not proof of one specific system. Enough to establish assisted or synthetic generation. Renji listened to the findings. They had my voice. Amara answered, not just your voice. She opened the order history. 11 months, repeated calls, repeated questions, repeated requests that she personally answer. Then something obvious emerged once the pieces were finally in one place. Every few calls R had asked whether she remembered something. A previous order, a preference, a phrase, his voice. Amara went back to the first recording, then the second, then the fifth. She stopped. They weren't checking whether I remembered the flowers. Renji understood before she finished. They were checking whether you remembered him. Amara felt anger before fear, not because she had been deceived, because someone had treated her memory like a system to be calibrated. She opened the gala contract. The Kanzaki Meridian approval was still there. Itsuko Hasegawa. Premium fee. Direct instruction that Amara personally supervise the installation, a detail that had seemed flattering at the time. Now it looked like placement. Renji said, the contract, yes, and the calls, yes. Amara returned to the hotel correspondence. The morning of the gala, Kagawa had received a security note recommending that non-essential external personnel be restricted near the Eastern Corridor. The message had originated through Kanzaki Meridian's Executive Events Office. Hasegawa's office. Kagawa had not invented the decision. He had applied it eagerly because Amara was the easiest contractor to isolate, but someone else had wanted her there, near the partition, near the voice terminal, near Kiryu. The entire architecture came into focus. Amara said it first. They didn't choose me because I wouldn't notice. Renji said nothing. They chose me because they wanted me to notice the wrong thing. The sentence changed everything. The transmitter, the contract, the calls, Kiryu's voice, her presence at the gala, the fact that R always insisted on speaking with her personally. The plan had never depended on Amara remaining irrelevant. It depended on her becoming credible at exactly the right moment. A blind florist known among clients for remembering voices would appear unusually persuasive. If she identified Kiryu as the man she had been speaking to for almost a year. Visual disguise would not explain her testimony. Bias would make the lie stronger. People would believe that a blind witness could not have been influenced by appearances. They had spent months manufacturing that witness. Amara sat down slowly. Renji remained standing. Hasegawa wanted you to authenticate him, he said. Yes. Not formally. No. Socially. That was worse. Formal evidence could be challenged. An independent civilian saying, I know that voice carried a different kind of force, especially if she had 11 months of prior contact. Kiryu was not simply impersonating Renji. Hasegawa was building a network of people documents and memories around him until institutions stopped caring whether he was genuine. Amara opened the ballroom audio, captured by hotel security after the transmitter was found. She listened to Kiryu again. Now she understood why his voice had felt nearly correct. Someone had trained him against the same model used in the calls. But they had missed what mattered most to her. Not tone, not pitch, the breathing rhythm. The micro pause before certain consonants. The physical habits no audio model had taught Kiryu to carry naturally. That small mismatch had prevented her from confirming him instinctively. The conspiracy had failed. The people who studied her skill misunderstood how it actually worked. Renji called his counsel back. This time, he did not ask what could be protected. He asked what had to be exposed. The answer was expensive. To disprove Hasegawa's authorization chain, Renji would need to release internal governance records. Those records would show which companies he actually controlled, which attorneys held legitimate delegated authority, and which transfers had been approved through genuine channels. The records would destroy Kiryu's claim. They would also destroy Renji's anonymity. For 12 years, he had survived because ownership and identity were separated. Winning now required joining them publicly. His counsel warned him twice. Renji listened both times. Then he authorized release. Amara heard the confirmation code entered. No hesitation, no attempt to bargain for a cleaner solution. This was not the kind of protection he had offered her before. He was not controlling the danger. He was accepting damage he could not reverse. Amara made her own choice immediately after. Her attorney advised her to distance herself from the scandal. No public statement, no cooperation beyond subpoena. Protect Nocturne. Amara refused. Her business records were the spine of the conditioning operation. Without them, the voice analysis could be dismissed as technical ambiguity, so she authorized release of the relevant calls, invoices contracting emails and timestamps through counsel. Not to Renji, not to Kurohane. To investigators and the institutions reviewing the merger. It damaged her privacy. It exposed her customer practices. It guaranteed her name would remain attached to the case. She did it anyway. They worked from different sides. Amara proved the pattern that had created the false witness. Renji proved the corporate structure the false identity was intended to seize. By evening, the two evidence chains met. Hasegawa's office had approved Amara's unusually lucrative contract. The same office had routed access instructions that positioned her near the relevant corridor. The same corporate network benefited from transfers supposedly approved by Takamori, and the voice conditioning calls began shortly before those transfers started. The plan was no longer a theory. It had sequence, motive, mechanism. Kiryu's position collapsed first. Two investors withdrew their recognition of his authority. A bank suspended every document carrying his Takamori-linked approval pending fraud review. Then Kanzaki Meridian's board halted the merger. Hasegawa was removed from operational authority. Investigators examined surveillance-forged authorization and commercial identity manipulation. No one was arrested in front of Amara. No one needed to be. The system they had built around Kiryu stopped accepting him. That was enough to kill the impersonation. Renji won back his name and lost the shield around it. By midnight, financial reporters had enough verified information to identify him publicly as the actual head of Kurohane. The first photographs began circulating before Amara closed the shop. She stood behind the counter. Notifications accumulated on her phone. Renji was beside the front window. For once, neither of them had anything left to solve. "You should leave," Amara said. He turned. "For tonight, for me." She heard him breathe once. Then he understood. "No. Your name is public now. Yes. My shop is already attached to it. Yes. And you think disappearing fixes that? No. Then why? Because everything I do around you creates consequences." Amara almost interrupted. He continued, "I spent months learning not to decide what protection means for you." That stopped her. "So, I'm not deciding now." He took one step back from the counter. "If you want me gone, I go. And if I don't, I stay until you tell me otherwise." No declaration. No promise he could not guarantee. Just a choice returned to the person whose choices had been manipulated from the beginning. Amara did not answer immediately. For the first time since the gala, the danger was no longer hidden. Neither was Renji. That made the next decision harder, not easier. And this one belonged entirely to her. Amara did not answer Renji that night. She closed the shop instead. That was the first decision she made after the crisis. It did not involve evidence, investigators, banks, or someone else's identity. Renji waited while she locked the register. She covered the unfinished arrangements and checked the cooler temperature. He did not ask again. When she finally turned toward him, she said, "Go home." He accepted it, not as rejection, as an answer for that night. 3 weeks later, the shape of the victory had become easier to measure. It was not clean. Hasegawa remained under formal investigation for commercial fraud, unlawful surveillance, and manipulation of corporate authorization. Kanzaki Meridian removed her from executive control before regulators finished deciding what else would follow. Kiryu disappeared from every role that had depended on people accepting him as Takamori. He was not destroyed. That was almost beside the point. The moment institutions stopped treating his identity as useful, the structure around him collapsed. Renji's consequences were harder to hide. His name was public now. His photograph appeared in financial reporting, beside stories about Kurohani-linked assets and the failed merger. Banks demanded disclosure, where they had previously accepted layers of attorneys and holding companies. Several senior Kurohani figures resisted. They had benefited from the old ambiguity. Renji gave them a choice: operate under the new structure or leave it. Some left. He did not stop them. That surprised Amara more than anything he had done during the crisis. Months earlier, she would have expected him to preserve the organization simply because it was his. Instead, he began reducing it. Opaque shell companies were dissolved. Legitimate logistics holdings moved under external audit. Several informal channels of control disappeared entirely. It cost him leverage. It also made another Kiryu harder to manufacture. When Amara asked whether he considered that a defeat, Renji said parts of it were never worth protecting. She remembered that. Nocturne survived too. Barely at first. The luxury hotel contracts did not all return. Neither did several corporate clients whose boards considered her name inconvenient now that it appeared in public reports beside Takamori's. Renji never called them. She knew because she checked. He kept his promise. The business became smaller, then different. Independent restaurants began ordering from her. A gallery commissioned seasonal installations. 2 couples who had read about the case asked her to design their weddings. Amara disliked the attention attached to that. She accepted the work anyway. Not because the scandal had improved her reputation, because the customers had chosen her work after knowing the whole story. That distinction mattered. Kagawa's consequence arrived without drama. The Asterion Hotel completed an internal review and removed him from security-sensitive vendor coordination. Amara received a formal apology from management. She listened to the message once, then deleted it. She had not needed Kagawa ruined. She needed the system around him to admit that making the easiest person to control the least important in the room was a security failure. The white camellias stayed. For several weeks, Amara considered removing them from her regular catalog. Too much had become attached to them. The transmitter, the calls, the gala. In the end, she kept them. Giving up the flower would have felt like handing another victory to people who had tried to weaponize her work. Renji visited less often than before. That was deliberate. He stopped showing up unannounced just because he thought she needed protection. He asked. Sometimes she said yes. Sometimes no. Neither answer became a negotiation. That was new. One evening after closing, Amara found him in the back room while she sorted supplier invoices. "You are terrible at being subtle now," she said. "My face is in the newspapers. That is not what I meant." He knew. For several minutes she continued working. There was no crisis left between them, no shared enemy forcing proximity, no investigation demanding trust. That made conversation harder. Renji spoke first. "I can stay away. Permanently." Amara stopped sorting invoices. "If that is what you want, it is not. Then don't phrase it like a sacrifice." He accepted the correction. "What do you want?" There it was. The question he once would not have asked. Amara folded the last invoice and set it aside. I want my business to remain mine. It will. No ownership through another company. No. No anonymous payments. No. No security around me that I haven't agreed to. He nodded. If something changes, you tell me before you decide what I need. Yes? No buying buildings. That almost made him laugh. Understood. She continued. And I will not pretend your past disappears just because parts of the organization changed. I'm not asking you to. Good. He waited. Amara understood then that there was a matching cost on her side. Choosing Renji meant accepting scrutiny she could not completely control. People would assume favors. Some would interpret her business through him, no matter what they actually did. His past would continue creating consequences neither of them could schedule in advance. Walking away would be simpler. It would not restore her previous life. That version was already gone. She said, If we do this, I choose when you are beside me. Renji answered, And I choose to stay only, while you keep choosing it. That was enough. There was no confession. Not that night. There did not need to be. The agreement was harder than a confession, and so it mattered more. Months later, Renji entered Nocturne 20 minutes before closing. No escort came through the door with him. No one called ahead. Amara recognized his footsteps before the entrance bell finished ringing. You're early, she said, for what you usually arrive after I close. I'm trying something different. That sounds dangerous. He approached the counter. What should I buy? Amara stopped. For almost a year, flowers had been used to anchor a false memory inside her. After that, they had become evidence. Then scandal, then survival. Renji had never walked into her shop and just asked what he should take home. She reached into a bucket beside the counter and selected one white camellia. She placed the stem in his hand. 1-1. Where should I put it? Amara turned slightly toward the shelves. Wherever you think it belongs. He remained still for several seconds. This time the pause was completely human. Then he crossed the room and placed the camellia in a small ceramic vase near the window. Amara heard the base touch wood. He returned to the counter. Wrong place, he asked. No. How do you know I didn't say it was right? He understood. The point was that she had let him decide. The point was that he had not asked to own the room before choosing a place inside it. Outside traffic moved through Tokyo as usual. Inside Nocturne felt smaller than before, quieter than before, and more honestly, hers. Renji stayed until closing. Amara let him. Trust begins where power accepts the possibility of being refused. Subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what you think really changed them.